All right, are you buying new construction in the DC area? We're going to talk today about 7 things you really need to know. So, my first job in real estate was working for a land developer. After 2 years of that, I went to work for a national builder, D.R. Horton. And after that mess of a couple years, I went on to another builder. So even though that builder at the time was a top 10 builder, you've never heard of them before. That's because they went out of business. Thank you, 2008 housing bubble. Anyway, when it comes to new construction, I actually do know a few things. I learned quite a few interesting little tidbits when I worked for builders, and the tricks that I learned from being on the inside have served me quite well. So I'm going to share some of the top things with you so that you are prepared before you go to buy a new home. Now, everything we're going to cover here applies sort of equally across the board, right? It applies to the large home builders, it applies to the smaller builders who may do 5 or 10 homes a year, and it's going to apply to those in between who are sort of like mid-sized builders, but maybe not national, maybe they're just like a local or a regional builder. Number 1, beware buying without an agent who is experienced with new home sales. This is important, very important. If you have any intention of being represented by a real estate agent, do not pop into the model just on a whim. Even if you're driving by and they look so pretty and the signs and the balloons all beckon you, come hither. Come see what we have behind the beautiful wall number 2. Resist the urge to go inside. Why? Because I said so. That's why. I'm a mom. It just comes out naturally. Know what to do. A little bit bossy. But here's the deal. So many buyers are going to go direct to the sales office, and that's fine if you know what you're doing. Other buyers will bring any agent with them, which is okay, but it may not really help you. You really must have somebody represent you who is familiar with how builders work. They don't need to have worked for builders, but they do need to know where to interject their input to help protect you, the buyer. Now, regardless of which route you choose, you must have the real estate agent with you at the first visit. There are no exceptions to this rule. Do not think that you can give them a fake name because they are going to ask you for your identification. It's safety first these days, but also they want to log who you are and they want to know who's in there. So for those of you who might be thinking, how hard can this be? If I go in without an agent, they might actually give me that commission. They won't. So we're going to cover negotiation and some other pieces of this next, but just know that they're not giving that commission money to you as a buyer. And even if you like the sales rep, they're not giving it to the sales rep there either. It goes back into the builder's pocket where they want it. They're just not going to give it to anybody. So it's sort of like a little bit of a lose-lose either way. Now, second, they love when you come in without a knowledgeable agent because they can usually upsell you in services and upgrades, all of which we are going to cover next. Number 2, beware, there are no negotiations. Builders have their own contracts. There is no form contract that we're going to be filling out together like we would if you bought a resale property, right? That's something like a house that somebody owns or lives in or whatever. There's not going to be the regular form contract. These contracts are going to protect the builder, and they are not going to protect you at all. The price is the price. There is no negotiation that you can do on the price. If you don't like the price, they really don't care. They will find somebody else to sell it to. The more you understand, though, their rationale for why they don't negotiate, the better prepared you're going to be. So let's go into this for a few seconds. There's several reasons why they do this. First, prices are always the lowest when a community first opens up for sale. Essentially, what they're doing is they are training the market. They train customers that they should buy in early so that when you see ABC builders or whatever it might be, you're like, oh man, the last community that I saw, their prices just went up and up and up. So I should make sure to go over there sooner than later. Not a bad way of thinking, but let's keep talking about this. Because the truth is that there is a method to all of this madness behind the scenes. Now, you should know, builders release the less desirable lots first, while the waiting list is quite long and the buzz is quite high. So when you first visit the community, the sales rep is going to tell you that yes, in the future, lot releases are going to come down the way, but we're developing in this area now, and as we get to this part of the subdivision, we'll release those lots, but we're trying to sell this section so that our trucks can be here, finish the houses, sell the houses, and move on. They're trying to be efficient, right? Buyers are going to panic because they're going to hear that these lots over here come with higher prices, so you don't win by waiting, Mr. Customer. You want to buy now while the prices are lower. So you panic, you lock up a home now. What you don't know though is that the reason prices only go up is there's a couple reasons. First, the builder is selling the least desirable lots first while the demand is high. So those future lots were naturally going to probably come with a premium anyway. And you can see how they engineer this initial demand and claim that strong sales justify higher prices, right? The reality is that behind the scenes, they're releasing additional lots at higher prices because they were deemed to be more desirable anyway. And they've got to satisfy their lender. So they need to create this like mad rush of initial sales to ensure their lender that they're going to be paying back very timely on their loans. The second reason that builders do not negotiate is that they cannot sell homes for less money than their original prices. Now, why is that? Well, it pisses people off, okay? And it trains them, again, that waiting is better. When the housing market turned in 2007, 2008, this actually happened where some builders were reducing prices so that they could sell quickly. This did not go over well with the buyers who bought into the community early. If you have a reputation for lowering prices down the road, you would essentially train the public to just wait. Like, why would they come in there when you first open for business? This is why builders never lower prices. So let's talk about other things that you can negotiate. Well, there's going to be a deposit required of you. Sometimes there's a deposit to hold your lot. In other cases, they're going to go straight to contract and require a deposit of 5 or 10%. They may have a fixed deposit, or they may have a combination of all of these different scenarios. Just know that you're going to part with a serious chunk of cash. I have managed now to negotiate the deposit situation essentially for two separate clients who just purchased new homes, right? They're both under contract right now. In one case, they just weren't putting as much down as the deposit that the builder wanted, right? Like the house was close to $1 million and the builder was asking for a 10% deposit. A lot of people aren't running around with $100,000 liquid that they can just write a check or wire some money for, right? So because they weren't sure, because they thought they might go like 7% down and they didn't want to have to put that much up, we worked it out and we talked to them about it. In another case, my clients just didn't have that much cash that was liquid. It wasn't the right time to sell stocks from investment accounts and things like that. In both of these cases, it was two different builders, and the builder's sales rep kind of took this information to the powers that be up the chain, whatever it is, and they approved the lower deposit. So there are things you can negotiate, but just know that the price is not going to be one of them. All right, number 3, beware the builder contract. So we talked about this for a hot second before, but the builder contract, it's very long. And it's going to stipulate all kinds of things. Like you can't go in the home while it's under construction unless the builder has a set appointment with you, like a pre-drywall walkthrough. It will outline where your deposit will be held, which is important. A small builder may not have enough money and they may use your deposit for their construction. You never ever want to agree to this. Okay, this is not good. Large and national builders are going to hold your deposit in escrow, but smaller builders, they might not. So if you find a builder who's actually going to utilize your deposit to like run their business, build their house, pay their workers, you need to run. Like, get out of Dodge quickly. That is not good. All right, the contract will not include a financing contingency. This is important because from the time you contract with the builder to the time your house is built and ready to close on, many, many things can change, right? Interest rates could rise sharply. You could have an emergency that requires you to use funds that you maybe had earmarked for the deposit, but now you have maybe like a family medical emergency or something like that, and you've got to use that money. Maybe you lose your job, right? Something like that. So each builder is going to handle this differently, but in most cases, just know like you probably could lose your deposit. And this is very scary for people to have to commit to. So just understand like all of the nuances and everything around financing, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and all of that. Now, your contract may also limit your ability to turn around and immediately sell your home. That's because they want to prevent just like straight up investors that are trying to flip. This was also a thing pre-housing bubble, is that people would come in, they would stick money into these houses, get them under contract, and then just try to turn around and sell them, and they were walking away with equity. So most builders are going to reserve the right to buy back your house within a year or two because they just don't want to find themselves in competition with you while they're still trying to sell the new houses in the community. Just something else to know. Number 4, beware the builder credit. Sounds good, doesn't it? Every builder pretty much offers a closing cost credit if you use their preferred lender and title company. Now, I will say that it is usually in your best interest to just use their title company because they've run title on the property. So that will hopefully help you to at least capture some sort of cost savings, because their main job is to run title, make sure it's clear, and then issue title insurance. So if they've kind of already done that when the builder purchased, then they don't have to go back the 60 years to show this unbroken chain of title. They only have to go back from the point in time that like they ran it for the builder to present day. And that's pretty good. Not to say that other title companies can't do that, because they are able to sort of pull title and sometimes get the reissue rate. My lovely title attorney does do that for people, and she'll dig around to look for it. But just know that that's a possibility, right? So you should capture at least some cost savings since they have the title insurance already from the builder's purchase. All right, builder credits. I've seen builder credits of $15,000 where my clients actually priced it out with the builder's preferred lender and another lender that I recommended. My lender was still a better deal. A side-by-side comparison actually revealed that the interest rate was much higher with the preferred lender. And then they used most of that credit to like buy down your interest rate. I know, that's like the biggest whatever. So scam of the century. We bought down your interest rate. So they used almost all of the credit to do so. And then the preferred lender's rate after the buy down actually still wasn't as low as my lender that I recommended. So you've got to take everything with a grain of salt and compare everything. My clients very astutely noticed, what's the point of a credit if they're just going to jack the fees up and then use the whole credit to offset those fees? That's what I call fake money. There's fake news, there's now fake money. It's fake money. In some cases, the builder also owns the mortgage company. You're going to see this with much bigger builders typically. This means they are making money on you from not only the house, but also the loan. This is how they can end up passing a substantial cost savings to you. So bigger builders I've seen give a credit like of $20,000 if you use their lender and title, which is kind of like a really good deal. Just price it out. There are positives to using the preferred lender, though, with the builders. Once they've run your financing and they share that with the builder, it's highly unlikely that your financing is just going to like not go through, right? So, and if that does happen, but you can get yourself approved with another lender, some of the really good builders, Pulte, will still give you the credit. So that's just like something to really consider, right? So the other reason is that the builder has a lot more comfort with your loan if they know that it's like with their in-house or preferred lender, whoever it may be. And this actually could make the difference between you getting the home and losing it out to another buyer, right? Who comes in with some other random lender. Number 5, beware those closing costs. Generally in the DC metro area, we have what we will call transfer taxes and then recordation taxes. And typically those costs run sort of around the same. Like DC, they're exactly the same. And in Maryland, it transfers a little bit less than recordation, but they vary based on county as well and things like that. So the contracts that call for the sellers to pay transfer and for the buyer to pay recordation usually are going to be in resale. Builders used to pay their own closing costs for their side, i.e. the transfer. So typically the contract will assign transfer costs to the person selling and recordation costs to the person who's buying and, recording their new loan and the new title. Sometime in the past decade, builders in certain geographic areas in the region started passing 100% of the closing costs over to the buyers. I actually think that this was like potentially a discrimination suit that the state of Maryland and many other people missed. This was happening for a few years in only areas where the average income was lower, the minority populations above 50%, and where there were many more first-time homebuyers. But now all builders in pretty much all locations are passing full amount of closing costs onto the buyers completely. And then their answer for why they do that is either, well, it's kind of customary, or that's what the credit can be used for in the case of like a larger builder. Number 6, beware the options and upgrades. People, the model home is alluring. It is sexy and very, very enticing. It begs you to come in, to coo at the features, to swoon at the fixtures, and decide that you need things that you never even knew existed. I promise you, there is a ton of buyer psychology behind why the model homes are decorated the way they are. The designers who have this job are very highly skilled at working on your senses to make you want the home and part with your money. And the home likely has $250,000 of options and upgrades. When you price out all of the options and upgrades that you want, it's probably going to be a giant shock. Now, I highly recommend what you do here is you focus on the structural items that you want and leave the non-structural items for another day. you should know that the builder's profits are directly tied to the options and upgrades. If you bought only the base house and you didn't do anything to it, their profit's probably going to be like 18 to 20% if they're lucky. Now, the profit margin on most options and upgrades is like in excess of 50%. That's a really high markup. So if you buy a ton of options and upgrades, their profit could move closer toward like the 30% mark, right? Overall on the house. Choose wisely, my friends, on the upgrades. I would honestly say that this is one of the areas where a skilled agent can really assist you. Number 7, you want to understand the differences between large builders and small builders. Large home builders are typically less flexible than smaller builders, but it also depends on the builder. Large builders have a process and rules, and they tend to not stray from their process and rules. The ones who own their own mortgage company and their own title companies are really like, they're going to have you over a barrel. But the consolation is that you're going to get a great home from a builder with a high standard and a great reputation. Mid-sized builders are going to have pros and cons, and they can actually almost in a way be the wild card, right? Because in my opinion, these guys can be some of the hardest builders to work with, right? They may not have the years of experience or the deep pockets to employ the best of the best and to take care of things without complaint like the bigger builders do. And sometimes parts of the process can feel like a little bit slack or janky, as I say. This could be to your advantage though. Like one of the mid-sized builders around here, just the sales rep took my clients on their word that they were going to buy a certain home, and they didn't have the deposit for a week, and he still had it off the books and as pending contract under the MLS, which was interesting. They ended up buying it, but it took a few days to get everything else situated and a week to get it completely ratified. Most large builders would not give you that much of a grace period. Now, smaller builders actually may be the most flexible in a way, but if they are only building a few houses a year, the flexibility may not necessarily be financial, right? They may be willing to change things in the home that they can without incurring a ton of cost or passing that cost on to you, but they typically aren't going to be able to wait around for your deposits for your loan to be funded. This is typically their own business, but the ones who are great at it will really care for their product and care for their buyers, and they'll do whatever they can to make you happy. All right, this was a lot, and I could probably go on about this forever. I used to sit in D.R. Horton at the room next to where they did closings, and I would hear all kinds of crazy stuff, right? They would make them sign the paper, and then they would say, here's your keys to the hotel because we didn't get the certificate of occupancy for your house in time. I would literally hear people in there screaming and wanting to throw punches because of how wild it was. So thankfully those days are well past us, and you can't really get your house now unless you do have the certificate of occupancy, thank goodness. But I hope this helped clear up some of the myths and the secrets about new construction, and that's my element. I love it. So if you have any type of new construction situation here in DC that you want to talk about, give me a call. The contact info's coming next.